Let's get cracking here in using levels as an adjustment tool. Let me turn this on over here. I've got a layer with something in it. Remember something about levels. Levels is very visual. It uses a histogram. The histogram represents where the pixels are in this image based on their relative brightness. So we go from 0 to 255, and it's telling me how many of every pixel are in this image. Now, just to make sure you understand this, this is not the histogram of this image. That is just a screenshot. If it was, this area would be way over on the white side because there is a lot of white in snow. The histogram lets me know what's going on. What I try to do with the histogram, if I can, is pull it out, stretch it more to give an image more dynamic range. If you can do that correctly, you can bring more contrast and more value to an image. If you do it too far, you can flatten it out too. But remember, levels is very visual. We use a visual orientation to correct it. Let's get out of that. Turn that off. Just a layer. Let's go into our adjustments, work smart, and here's the button right here. Of course, we have level presets, but we want to start blank. So let's pull that out so we can see this. And we'll click this button right here, which will generate a levels adjustment layer. We'll make it bigger by clicking this button, easier to see. Let's begin at the top and work our way down. At the top are the defaults, the presets that you saw earlier. And so if you want to use them, you still got them here. Actually, let's start by making one. You've got 30 or 40 photographs of the back bowl and veil, and they're really good. You're not going to get another chance to get back there for a while, but your contrast is a little bit off. All photos have the same problem. And what do? Oh, I don't know. Maybe pull in a little bit here, pull in a little bit here, and you wind up with what you think is a good contrast correction to this particular image. But you don't want to do this 30 or 40 more times. You want to maybe click a button. So we're going to do this. Click this button up here for options and go into Save Levels Preset. All the adjustments have that ability. We'll give it a name like back bowl and click Save. I'm going to click this button here, which resets everything. Now, if you open up the next photograph, no big deal. What do? You come back in here and you go to back bowl. Just makes life a little bit easier. So we can make our own. In addition, if you don't want it anymore, you can click here and say delete current preset to get rid of it. So we can make our own adjustments. That's cool. Next thing down is channel control. Remember one thing about this. If you're working in RGB, you're controlling the tone of the image. You're lightening or darkening, increasing or decreasing contrast. If you work with the individual colors, you can achieve those same results, but you're also messing around with color. You're changing color. So the difference is you work with all three at the same time, it's tonal values. You work with one at a time, it's color values. We have eyedroppers over here, which we'll use, and they allow me to select visually areas that I want to clip, say, to black. We have the ability to control those by double-clicking on them. You double-click on an eyedropper, and you can control what values it uses, and we will use those to help fix images. Over here, of course, you've got your sliders, and those sliders go from black to white, and then midtones in the middle. These numbers here reflect where the slider is. So if you have a specific number in mind on what you're doing, you can type it in rather than dragging and watching the numbers change. This button right here allows you to create what is defined as a more accurate histogram. Now, I can only do this once. Click the button, watch what happens. Changes slightly. What happens in a histogram is Photoshop economizes a little bit by just working with the image that's on the screen. And this image is not at 100%. So there is missing information in terms of pixels. When you click that button, it creates a more accurate histogram based on the total image. I usually like to do that so I can see exactly what I'm working with. Output levels are actually for output, say, to press. You're going out to a newspaper. You ever notice some images look darker when you put them in a newspaper? Kind of hard to see maybe people. What you can do is adjust the inks for output. For example, if you know your newspaper has a dot gain of 20%, which means the paper is going to get 20% darker, you can ask them for an output levels number, and actually, now you'll notice it gets lighter. But in reality, what's going to happen is when it prints, if you can reduce the inks by 20%, by the time it gets printed, more or less, what you're going to have is an image that actually works in that particular paper. So it'd be different for the different types of paper you use, and that's what these numbers are down here for output levels. The rest of the buttons down here, this button allows you to go back to the adjustments panel if you want to do something different. This one allows you to go back to where you were. This button expands or contracts adjustment. This button allows me to create a clip. So if you watch this one right here, if I click this button, you will notice it creates what's defined as a clip group, which means this adjustment only works with that one layer. If I click that again, it would work with everything underneath it. This is a show hide button. Same thing as the show hide button over here, but you've got it right here, so you might as well use it. This button right here, which is not available right now, it allows you to view the previous state. And you can also do that by pressing the / key. We don't have a previous state, so it's not available. And this button is for resetting. In other words, if I come over here and really have some fun, don't like it anymore, if I click this button, it will allow me to reset back to default. You can do the same thing by coming up here and selecting default. And the last button right here is to get rid of that adjustment layer. It's the same thing as dragging this one to the trash. So those are all the buttons we have in levels. There are some other ones right here. If we click here, we've already looked at save. Now the load means you have other presets from other Photoshop users and you want to use them. You could use load. Auto options allows you to change the options for the auto button right here. We'll get into those a little bit later. Come back up here again. We've got reset, which is the same basically as doing the button down here. And here's all of your other options. And then you finally have down here if you want to close this tab or close if it's in a group, the whole group. Those are the options for levels. Remember, it's a tool designed to help the image look better by expanding the histogram to create dynamic range.